So our bodies have different organ systems that makes the entire organism, and we have different levels of organization that leads up to this level. And we need, of course, all of these organ systems to be able to function as a human being. So everything starts at the chemical level with atoms that combine to form molecules. And these molecules, they basically form 4 classifications in general that makes our body to have specific cells. So we have the 4 macromolecules, which are proteins. So we have 4 macromolecules. So we have proteins, which is the most abundant macromolecule. Then we have lipids or fats that forms the outer membrane that protects our cells. Then we have nucleic acids that provides instructions for our cells, like DNA. And then we have carbohydrates that, among several functions, play a role to provide energy for our cells. That's a function, but also they have interactions with other molecules, like with lipids or proteins, and they serve as, for instance, receptors or molecules that attach cells to other cells or cells to the environment so that the cells won't be floating around. So then here we have the example of this chemical. We have atoms, how they can form, in this case, a phospholipid molecule, which is made by these lipids, these 2 tails that you see here, and a phosphate group that form part of the cellular level structures like the plasma membrane or cell membrane. We will see more details of that in a couple of more chapters. And then we have a nucleus in the cells. And cells, we have different types in our body. So for instance, we have skin cells, we have heart muscle cells, skeletal muscle cells, we have bone cells, and they confine into specific areas in our body to make the tissues. And different tissues, so this is, for instance, the skin, different tissues, this is the type of tissue that we have in the skin, but also in the esophagus, but different tissues form organs. In this case, this is the esophagus, the tube that brings the food from the mouth into the stomach. And then the esophagus forms part of the digestive system that has, of course, more than the esophagus, has the mouth, the liver, gallbladder, the stomach, intestines, etc. And then we have 11 organ systems that all together forms the organism. And all of these 11 organ systems interact, sometimes physically, sometimes chemically, like in the case of the endocrine system. And all of them help to maintain health in our body. So here we have a complete organism. So that's the level of organization from smallest to largest. And here's the list of all the organ systems. Some of them, they are more complex than others, and they perform functions that are more complex as well, but all of them are important. So we're going to see each of these organs individually. So first, the integumentary system. The integumentary system is made by the skin, which is the largest organ that we have in our body. Also, accessory structures like the hair, nails. Functions, protection. So this system protects us from microbes that we have in the environment by providing a physical and chemical barrier. Also prevents us from losing a lot of water, so it helps to retain water, helps to maintain body temperature through increased blood flow or decreased blood flow, so that we can lose heat or preserve heat so that we have normal body temperature. As well, it starts the production of vitamin D. Vitamin D is one of these vitamins that is required for absorption of calcium. In calcium, it is very important for several functions in our body, including maintaining bone health, teeth health, contraction of muscles, cardiac, skeletal muscle, vision is important for vision, calcium, for preventing bleeding, tasting. It's incredible, all the functions that calcium has. The skeletal system, it's a system of support and protection. We have organs like bones and joints. It supports the body. It forms an attachment frame for our muscles and works together with the muscles to perform movements so that we can manipulate the environment, so that we can move as well. It protects internal organs. All the bones in our skull protects the brain. The vertebrae protects our spinal cord. Forms as a storage structure for calcium and also for phosphate and magnesium. Produces blood cells. So our white blood cells, our red blood cells are produced in the bones and acts as a leverage system. So we can, whenever we can carry objects, we don't have to basically lose a lot of energy. Muscular system, it is made out of muscles, ligaments as well, tendons. It's in charge of locomotion. Locomotion is the fancy word for movement. So it helps us to move. Also help us to generate heat. So when it's cold, one of the things that happens is that we start contracting our muscles so that we can generate heat. And control body openings, we have sphincters. Sphincters, it's a name for a circular layer of muscles. I have a tip. It's still there. Ooh, I moved the. So these sphincters open or close body cavities Yes, I knew it. There you go. So for instance, the oral cavity, our mouth, it has an sphincter. It's called orbicularis oris. That's the name of a muscle. So we close it. The anal sphincter. It's another sphincter. Nervous system. The nervous system consists of brain, spinal cord, and nerves. It helps to regulate body functions of the rest of the organ systems. It receives signals from them. It sends signals to them so that we can maintain homeostasis or dynamic equilibrium. It provides sensation. You know if the room is cold, if it's hot, if it's bright, if it's dim. And then performs automatic function or reflexes. So when you enter, for instance, into a dim room, your pupils dilate so you can get as much light. If it's bright, the room where you're going into, or if you go, for instance, outside, there's a lot of sunlight, then you constrict your pupils so that you don't have as much light going into your retina, and you don't damage your photoreceptors. Also is in charge of maintaining higher mental functions via nerve impulses. And here is the view of these structures of the nervous system. Endocrine system consists of several organs that we call glands or tissues. And this system has communication by chemical messengers that we call hormones. Most of the time, these tissues or glands, they are not physically connected, and they're scattered throughout the body. So we have endocrine tissue within the brain, within the neck, thorax, abdomen, and in the case of males, the testicles, which is also part of the endocrine system, it is found in the scrotum, outside of the core of the body. So functions will be to regulate also body functions like growth, reproduction. So regulate the function of muscles, glands, by these chemical messengers. Cardiovascular system. So it consists of the heart, blood, and blood vessels. It is in charge of transporting gases like oxygen, CO2, to be picked up by the cells in the case of oxygen, and get rid of the CO2 in the case of the lungs when we exhale. So removing wastes from the tissues. It also is in charge of basically defending our body, because we have the neutrophils, we have lymphocytes that are part of the immune system. Lymphatic system is highly linked its function with the cardiovascular system, because when the cardiovascular system delivers these nutrients and oxygen to the cells in our body, it delivers them with water, and this excess of water, if it's left in the tissues, it will make our tissues to be puffy, but the lymphatic system picks up the excess of fluid and then brings it back into the cardiovascular system. And then, of course, the cells of the lymphatic system, which is basically the lymphocytes, they defend our body against diseases, including cancer. And also we have not only cells in this system, but we have tissues like tonsils. Also, we have little organs like the lymph nodes that we have them in the strategic places, like the armpit, the neck, around our face, inside our thoracic and abdominal cavities, within the inguinal area, behind the knee, to protect from infections or diseases within these areas, the areas where we have exposure to certain infectious agents. So function in general is to protect against disease and return excess of fluid to the cardiovascular system. Respiratory system consists of a tract that starts in the nose and ends in the lungs. And it has also the lungs that help to oxygenate blood and get rid of CO2. And as well helps to maintain the acid-base balance. So control the levels of hydrogen that we have in our body. As you will see later, hydrogen is important to maintain homeostasis, body functioning. Digestive system is made by a tract that starts in the mouth, ends in the anus, and accessory glands, including salivary glands in the mouth, liver, gallbladder, and the pancreas. Has organs that act as a reservoir for food, like the stomach, and transfer and absorption of nutrients within the intestines, and also absorption of water. So functions to digest food, absorb nutrients into the blood, remove wastes, whatever food we don't ingest, and then maintain fluid, electrolyte, and acid-base balance. So starting from cardiovascular system and onwards, basically that's what we will study in AMP2. Urinary system consists of the kidneys, ureters, urethra, the urinary bladder, and function is to remove metabolic wastes from the blood. Maintains fluid, electrolyte, and acid-base balance. So as you can see, just like as the previous system, digestive system, it has the same functions of removing wastes, but also maintaining fluid, electrolytes, and acid-base balance. Same for the respiratory system. Maintain acid-base balance and stimulate blood cell production. Reproductive system, it consists of gonads like the testes in males and the ovaries in females, and as well of a tract like the ductus deferens in males and the fallopian tubes or uterine horns or uterine tubes in females, as well as copulatory organs like the penis in male. In the females will be the vagina, and an organ in the female to harbor the fetus and the embryo, which is the uterus. So functions is to produce gametes, sperm cells, and the egg cells. Sperm cells and egg cells have the half of the chromosomes that we have in the rest of the cells of the body. It's 23 individual chromosomes. So these are haploid cells, have the half of the chromosomes. Diploid cells have 46 chromosomes. And then secrete hormones like testosterone. In the case of females will be estrogens, progesterone, and in the case of females, additional function is to support fetal development, fetal nourishment, childbirth, and lactation. Questions? Okay, so now let's move into the segment for homeostasis and feedback mechanism. So homeostasis basically is maintaining stable internal conditions. And stable means not having swings of function within a range. So we have dynamic equilibrium. So for instance, our body temperature is 97.6 Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius, but that body temperature can have a range. In the case of the degrees Celsius, is between 36.5 and 37.5 degrees Celsius. And the set point is 37 degrees Celsius. And in order to maintain this range, we have these negative feedback and positive feedback loops or mechanisms. So negative feedback reverses the changes. So you receive an information through a receptor that receives this information. That will be the stimulus, that information that goes into this receptor. And then you send this signal into a control center. It can be the body temperature center in the hypothalamus in our brain, or any control center that we have in the body. Typically, they are located in the brain. And then that control center, once it receives that signal, it can tell whether this signal is out of the range or not, and then it will send commands, an effector signal, to the effector itself, which is going to make a change. Either it can oppose that change through negative feedback, or can reinforce that change through positive feedback. Now, most of our functions in our body are controlled through negative feedback than positive feedback. So negative feedback reverses the initial change, like glucose regulation. And positive feedback amplifies this change, like childbirth. So here we have this thermometer measuring body temperature. The body temperature can range between 97 to 99 Fahrenheit. And then this signal is going to be detected by thermoreceptor that sends the signal into the control center in the brain. So for instance, if your body temperature goes above 99 Fahrenheit, your thermoregulatory center in the hypothalamus will detect that change, and it's going to send a signal into your blood vessels in your skin, so that your blood vessels can increase the blood flow, and that increase of blood flow is going to allow the dissipation of heat through the skin, and also through sweat, through perspiration. So then this is going to be the effector, the specific structure within the body that carries the command that the control center gives. So that once you dissipate enough heat, you decrease the blood flow. So in this case, your blood vessels dilate, so they become larger in diameter so that they can carry more blood flow. But once you go back to the normal body range between 97 to 99 degrees Celsius, you don't have as much blood flow because you already reached the normal body temperature. And that will stop the feedback loop. But regularly we have several conditions that keeps this mechanism working, because you will be changing, like right now, you don't have as much blood circulation. How do I know? Well, because my veins, they don't show up as much because it's cold. But if I go outside, my veins are going to dilate. Why? Because the body temperature outside, it is hotter than in here. So because I'm constantly moving and I will encounter different environments, is going to be the feedback loops that we always will be activating. So that's an example of negative feedback. So in the case of positive feedback, like blood clotting mechanism, the stimulus is going to be an injury to a blood vessel, a cut. So that is going to lead to exiting of blood out from your blood vessel, and that is going to activate receptors in your blood vessel and in your platelets. So that is going to make your platelets to become activated so that they become bigger and they start forming a plug here in this wall of your blood vessel, preventing your blood cells to exit. Once your blood wall is repaired, there is no more need to have these platelets in there, so you will fibrinolyze or destroy this platelet of plugs, and then you will seal your blood vessel, and then you end this. But you start with very few platelets activated, and that leads to recruitment or more platelets. So that's a positive feedback. And also coagulation factors that helps you strengthen this platelet, and then you will have the repairing mechanism. Because as long as you will have blood flowing, since this is temporary and weak seal, that will basically be carried away by the blood flow, but you want to have another set of mechanisms, in this case the formation of fibrin, to help to strengthen this seal that you created here temporarily. Okay? So, an example of loss of homeostasis. It can be, for instance, if someone will have damage to the lungs, like we have in the lungs little chambers that are called alveoli, and these little chambers normally have a very thin wall. So this is called respiratory membrane. So through this respiratory membrane, because it's very thin, gases can come in and out without difficulty. Very fast transfer of gases. Oxygen comes into your blood, CO2 comes out to the environment. You exhale CO2, you inhale oxygen. Some people might have something that's called pulmonary fibrosis, in which this respiratory membrane becomes thickened by collagen fibers, scar tissue, and then the gases cannot get transferred or diffused really easily. In this case, oxygenation will be poor, and then you retain CO2, and the person will not be able to function properly. You won't be able to have enough levels of oxygen to generate ATP. So that's the loss of homeostasis. Now, we have in physiology one principle in which we say that molecules move from a higher concentration to a lower concentration, or things will move from more to less. And this will apply to temperature, not only to molecules, and also to pressure. When it is related to molecules, we call it a concentration gradient. When it's related to pressure, we call it pressure gradient, and when it's related to temperature, we call it temperature gradient. Gradient means difference. So, in the case of heat, the temperature gradient in here is from 80 to 70 degrees. So then, because in here we have higher temperature closer to this heater, then away, the heat will move from higher temperature to lower temperature, from 80 to 70, and not vice versa. Okay? In the case of molecules, like we have here a beaker with water, you put a pill with a dye in it. So the dye will start diffuse from this area where you have more concentration to an area here above where you have lower concentration until you reach an equilibrium. Same in here. As long as the heater is big enough to heat the room, there will be a time where the temperature is going to be even along the room, as long as you don't open the door of the room and the heat will escape. And when it comes to pressure, so the pressure will move from higher pressure to lower pressure until you reach equilibrium in a closed container. If it's an open container, there will always be move of pressure. So, let me show you kind of an example here. And I didn't do it on purpose, guys. It's something that I just thought about. So I have two pockets, front pockets in my pants. Little keys, big keys. Is there a difference in size? Yes. So this is more, this is less. Okay, let's count. So we are 3 here, 3 persons, and then you guys are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. So 13 on that side of that table, 3 here. If you were about to move, or we will be about to move, what will be the normal movement? From the 3 of us to the 13 of you, or vice versa. And let's say that we're applying pressure. How will it go? From here to here or from there to here, the movement? So now it's 13 plus 3. That makes a total of 16. If we were about to reach equilibrium, how many of you will move from there to here? 9? 5. 5 of you will move from that side to this side. So we will have 8 and 8 and no more movement. So that's the principle of physiology, principle of diffusion. So once you reach equilibrium, you don't move anything else anymore. Okay? So then gradients drive function. And then cell-cell communication controls function. So cells, they are not isolated. They work together. And in the case of this illustration, you have 2 different cells, a nerve cell and a muscle cell. So this nerve cell sends a signal, which we call action potential, into this muscle cell so that this muscle cell can contract and then help us to perform movement. So in order to communicate, this nerve cell releases these neurotransmitters. In this case will be acetylcholine. So that acetylcholine binds to receptors in this muscle cell, and this muscle cell will respond. So cell-cell communication promotes function. In this case will be contraction. So this is a preview for our next chapter. So the chemistry of life. So we will start understanding what are the different atoms, what they are made of, and how they form the molecules and how the molecules form cells and tissues. So we will explore the basic chemistry and we will correlate this to anatomy and physiology. So our tests are knowledge questions. Which of the following defines physiology? Physiology, what is it? The study of structure, disease, the study of function, or study of cells? So A, B, C, or D, guys? Is the study of function, so you are correct. In the anatomical position, the palms will face anteriorly. True or false? The sagittal plane divides the body into front and back positions. False. It divides it into what? Left and right. The distal region on the limbs is the closest to the trunk. True or false? False. The distal region is the farther away. The proximal region is the closest. Distal and proximal regions terms apply only to the limbs. True or false? I heard false and I heard true. Which one is it? Distal and proximal applies only to the limbs or also applies to the trunk?
Applies to the trunk.
So I can call this proximal and this distal?
Depends on what you're comparing it to, right?
So this is superior and this is inferior? No, right? I saw it. So then what is this? And what is this? So this is superior and this is? So then I cannot apply the same in here, right? So this is proximal and this is distal, applies only to here. Let me tell you why. Well, the part of our body that is movable is the limbs, right? So if I do this, and if I were about to call whatever is above, always in the limbs, if I were about to call it superior, and something below will be called inferior, then if this was superior, and this was inferior, once I do this, then everything is going to be mixed up. This is going to be superior, now this is going to be inferior. In order to prevent that, we always use close to the trunk, proximal, and this is distal, no matter what is the position of the limbs. You're supposed to be whoever you are, everywhere you go. That will define your personality, no changes. So in here, the same. Proximal always towards the trunk, distal always away. And of course, we have something in between. So this is more proximal. The antecubital area is proximal in relationship to the carpal area, because the carpal area is distal to the antecubital, but the antecubital is distal to the acromial. Why? Because this one is farther away than the acromial. So which is the most distal region of our upper limb? The fingers, the digits. That's the most distal. What is the intermediate between proximal and distal? Anteriorly. The antecubital. And posteriorly? what is the posterior region to the antecubital area? How do you call the elbow? In anatomy. Yes, I saw you, some of you pointing. Olecranon. The olecranon area. Okay. So we have something in between, but it depends on how you are comparing it, but always distal and proximal to the limbs. Don't call this superior, don't call this inferior. Always this proximal or distal, okay? And explain the difference between negative and positive feedback. Provide one example of each. So which one opposes the initial change? Negative. And which one reinforces the initial change? Positive. What is an example of a positive feedback? Blood clotting and childbirth. And then an example of negative? Control of body temperature. Let me tell you about childbirth. So you start with sporadic contractions, not as strong in the uterus. And then you start having it more frequently and more intense. That's a positive. So you start with minimal and sporadic, and then you start increasing it in frequency and strength. So that's positive. Okay, so that's all for chapter 1.